วัสดีครับท่านผู้ชมครับ For this episode, welcome to National Director Conference 2021, and this episode is episode 6, and we'll be talking in English. The topic is sharing and founding, solving boardroom paradox. As a founder, you are successful because the way you direct, but when you become a chairman, you cannot direct. So let's hear from Mr. Bill Heinecke, the chairman of Minor International, as his experience will explain how a chairman and a founder can coexist and make the best out of it. สวัสดีครับ Hello คุณ Bill.
Good morning. สวัสดีครับ
Many thanks for being here. I know that you're busy. So let's go to the first question. As a founder of Minor International, what is the most challenging things when you become the chairman of the board, because these are two different hats and have two different functionality?
Very true. I think when you step up to chairman of the board as opposed to being the CEO, you really have to now begin to take all members of the board into very careful consideration. You have to bear in mind that you've drawn some of the best people, hopefully, into your board, and they're very talented. They've got points of view, and it's important that you try to make sure that all of them can be heard. Otherwise, the benefits of having a very talented board are lost if you don't allow that board to be able to speak out. So one of the most important things I think as chairman is to ensure that you have a atmosphere within the board level that encourages interaction and frank and outspoken comments. It's also, important that the chairman recognize when he may have a vested interest in a discussion or topic or opportunity that's going on in the meeting. In which case, then he should remove himself, so that directors feel very open to talk about the thing, and it's important to have that kind of interaction at the board level.
Many thanks, Kun Bill. So you said about two things. One is the combination or the skill of the board, that they have to be great directors. Mm-hmm. Okay, and secondly, the chairman has to give them opportunity to speak up and express their ideas, right?
That's correct.
But normally, other directors would look up to the founder. This is human nature, because the founder has established this business and become successful. How did you, as a chairman, overcome that kind of obstacle and make the best out of all the directors?
I think it's important, it's like we learn when we're flying an airplane. You have to have what we call cockpit resource management. Just because you're the captain doesn't mean you're always right. And therefore, you have to make sure that your co-pilot, when you're in the cockpit, also has equal opportunity. He may detect a problem that's going on. I believe that many founders are too close to their business, and therefore it's difficult for them to see from outside their position. And that's where the role of the board members becomes so important. But it's again up to the chairman to ensure that atmosphere is open enough to get that what I would call board resource management and discussion going on. So hopefully, most chairmen, I think, if they are founders and chairmen that have risen to that level, recognize the most important thing about success is people. And it doesn't matter whether it's the people within the company or, even more importantly, the people within the board of directors whose experience and knowledge you need.
Okay, so let us step back from the boardroom, and you said that it's important that the board select good director who can speak up also, right? You know, all the family business in Thailand, when they were established, the founder probably would look to the people who they know to be their board, right? The people who they trust. So how did you start this board, and when did it happen that you can recruit good board who you might not know that well, but you trust their capability?
Right. I think one is obviously, again, this is where I think a board functions in terms of helping to select. Though we have a nominating committee that puts forward various board positions, we also have a lot of frank and open discussion at a board level. And you're absolutely correct that you may not know intimately an effective board member, but you recognize that he has a skill that is not represented on the board. He might have a legal background or a financial background. So it's very important to use the people and resources that you have to try and get the very best people. And then getting those best people often can't be done by the founder alone. He may need to use the board of directors to help encourage that person to join. I think it's really very important for the board, the chairman and the founder, to ensure that there's a open and respect for the quality of the directors that are on that board. I think it's easier to recruit an exceptional director when you have a board of exceptional people. If you have a board of very junior people, then most exceptional people will decline or seek another opportunity.
Okay, so basically, good people draw good people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And once you get some good board of directors, then that momentum will create a better board and recruit more better directors too.
Absolutely. No different than running a company. You need to create an environment so that you can draw and attract the top talent. And top talent won't come where they feel they won't have an opportunity to engage and to help the company.
But capability is one thing, but the character of the candidate, the way they believe, what they believe, their value, is that also another factor that has to be built in when you search for a new director?
Absolutely. I think when you look for a director, you've got to look at all aspects of the director, both his character, as well as his background, as well as his past experience. And it's no different than recruiting for a key position within a company. So, it's important that they have a high level of integrity. They're going to be making decisions on behalf of shareholders and other stakeholders. So they have a critical role to play.
Okay. If there are 3 words, I think you mentioned the first word, which is integrity. What are the top 3 words that all the member of your board has in common?
I think integrity, I think intelligence, and I think a willingness to speak out.
Okay. Integrity, intelligence, and courage to speak up. That sounds good. Now, Miner International has nomination and compensation committee, right? And they probably have done a good job in selecting the candidate. And how can you please describe the way they work, that how they spot the candidate, how they select, and how they come up with the qualification of the next directors, and how that director was selected?
I think first of all, we always keep a base of talented people that we think would be very good to join the board. And that's constantly updated. Every year we update that list. Then the list is also used for general discussion with the board. And as you may know, within the board, we also encourage our own self-evaluation. And during those self-evaluation discussions, which are done annually, we often identify areas where we feel the board may be weak, either in knowledge of legal practice or knowledge of mergers and acquisitions or some other area. And then very often we highlight where we think we're weak and try to identify candidates from our list that will fill that weakness. Running a board of directors is sort of like constantly trying to strengthen it and increase its capability. And that means by bringing in very often some new thoughts or new thinking on things. Recently we brought a board member in that had a very extensive experience in IT, because we felt that digitization is one of the most important things that we're going to be facing as we go forward. So we felt that none of the older members of the board had that sort of depth of experience. So we invited the new member, came on with that experience.
So normally there will be like 4 or 5 candidates that NCC or nomination committee would kind of submit to the board, right? How was the atmosphere at the board level when they have to choose, when they have to discuss this one fit better than that one? How rich is that kind of conversation?
I think it's again up to the chairman to ensure that discussion is very open. And I think, again, if you've chosen the right directors, making sure that discussion takes place is very easy. If you have directors that only look to the chairman and are only a rubber stamp, then clearly you have the wrong directors and you're not going to get the best talent. The whole reason for calling an independent director independent is that you want an independent person's thinking, and that's what we always seek, whether it's an executive member of the board or an independent director of the member of the board.
So your role as a chairman is to speak last, probably. And
absolutely, I think, as I often said, I think one of the things that's very important is to hear everybody's opinion, and you want to encourage all of the directors to be able to speak out and say what they feel. And very often that means for the chairman has to remain silent until the last moment, where he renders his opinion, so as not to discolor everyone else's view on the thing. Obviously, there are times when I've looked at a member of the board and wondered, I don't know that person. I wonder whether he will be effective. So I have to rely very heavily on the other members. If I speak up first and have my doubts about that person, then that may color the opinion of the other directors. And I think the last thing a chairman wants to do is color the opinion of his board, because then he won't get the best advice. Okay, so it's not the chairman only, but you rely on other directors to encourage the environment where people speak up, right? But I empathize new directors who just became on board, and with the minor international, it's not a simple business, right? How do you or the rest of the board member encourage the new directors to be there at present and function as soon as possible? I think a lot of this is done really in the stage of selecting. Most of our directors have had a number of years experience on other boards, and so they're coming already with a bit of experience. Obviously, if you choose a person who's a first-time member of the board, he'll need, like everyone, a little bit of education, and the best education for that person is learning from the experience of others. So a talented board is I can't overemphasize how important it is to gain credibility for the company, to gain experience, to move one's company ahead of the others in a very competitive environment. Okay, so it means that the candidate that you're looking for is not a brand new director. Very often not a brand new director, but have taken members on who may have their first board position, especially if they're what I would call executive directors. They may be bright and upcoming stars within the company. And, within our company, we've always encouraged a significant number of executive directors because we feel they know the business better than anyone. And my role as chairman, then, I don't have to be an expert on each of the divisions. I can allow the executive director who's in charge of that division to speak up. And the board has an opportunity then to question the source. Very often, it's typical of anyone, whether you're a chairman or you're an ordinary. A lot of people don't like to be questioned, and especially about subjects that they may not be intimate with. So, as we're a global company now dealing in many different countries, it's important to ensure that you have people on the board who speak about the business to these directors with an extreme in-depth knowledge.
So, in other words, it's like engaging the board with what really matters to the business.
Absolutely. And it's important, as I said, that you have an intimate knowledge of that business. Board members can be very inquisitive and really want to learn. You can't expect a board member that you've recruited who's never worked in your industry to suddenly be brilliant at it. But what you've employed that director for, what you've recruited that director for, is not his experience in your business, but his experience in general, and the fact that he's able to bring with him knowledge of other sectors and other fields that will help the board to grow. It's all about growing the board too. I think each board member is learning every day when you're in a progressive board atmosphere.
Okay, so it sounds to me like when a board of directors came from another board of directors, they brought the common sense of being a director.
That's right, but common sense is not so common anymore.
Exactly, the common sense is not so common anymore, especially in this new normal. But that is what they have to bring in, is ability to questions, ability to think outside
the box,
minor international, and link it to others, ability to open the point of view of others, ability to question the assumptions.
Right, absolutely. And I think it draws me to compare a very good board of directors with the government of Thailand. One of the things you want to keep out of the board is politics. So you're recruiting people because of their skill and talent and experience, not because of the fact that they bring their political appointees, you might say. So I would like to make sure that in our board that we don't have any political appointees. They're each have a skill to bring to the board and to make that board function more effectively. I think we can all see the difficulties that our prime minister has in trying to effectively rule the country with a group of board members that he may not have even been able to choose or have been forced upon him by political lobbying. So, one of the things I pride myself on is that our board is very independent, and they haven't we haven't forced anybody onto the board or been forced to take on any board members. So, I think that works even with other stakeholders. In other words, if you had a huge banking relationship, the bank may force you to take on a board member that isn't necessarily going to be helpful to the board. We have board members that have come from banks, but the big difference, I think, is that we've chosen them rather than they've been chosen for us by the banker. So,
okay, so coming back to duty of loyalty, that the board has to loyal to the sustainability of the business.
Absolutely, and it's not loyalty to the chairman or to the company. It's loyalty to sustainability.
Exactly, that word sustainability, not about one individual or any or subgroups.
That's correct.
That brings me to the next topic, which is about when there are discussion that might create the conflict of interest between the owner, the major shareholder or the founder, and as the chairman, how do you run that kind of sensitive discussion, and how do you expect other directors, especially independent directors, to handle that?
I think first and foremost, I would wish to identify clearly to the board that I have a vested interest as the largest shareholder or whatever. And in that case, I would, if it was a delicate issue, I would certainly remove myself from the board to encourage them to speak openly and without my presence. Now, I think then you can get a much more open environment within that board when the person that's connected to the transaction removes himself. And that can also come from sometimes directors themselves, that when you're discussing a major supply contract and one of the directors may have an interest in that supply contract. I'd like to, I'm very proud of the fact that our board would always identify that they're involved in that company, or they're a director or a shareholder or an owner, and then remove themselves from the board. And in doing so, I've never worried about conflicts of interest, because we manage those conflicts very well, because you're always going to have today conflicts because there's so many vested interests and there's so much synergy in the world, as we call it. Synergy is when it all works. Conflict of interest is when it doesn't work. So,
yeah.
So I think it's just very important. Again, it's all part of that atmosphere and environment that you create for the board, and it relies on the chairman and in my case that means the founder, to ensure that that atmosphere is going to be open to making the right decision, the correct decision, which may well mean that it favors the founder, or it favors the largest shareholder, because at the end of the day, very often the reason why that company has grown and been successful is because of the founder's influence and direction. So all conflicts are not negative, and all steps that are taken by a board to protect the independent stakeholders are equally important.
Yeah. So what you're saying is conflict of interest and synergy in the new world, or the real world, just two sides of the same coin.
That's correct.
Yeah, and which means that we cannot avoid it. We
Absolutely.
just have to address it.
Address it openly.
Openly, right? And does your board member, do you look for the experience that they have gone through this process elsewhere in another company? Is it going to be an extra plus when they have deal with all these sensitive or these delicate issues previously, and bring that experience to here?
No, for sure. This is when you have that kind of director that has had experience like that. He's a benefit to the other board members who may not have had that experience, and that's where, again, you want to have a broad board that has varied experiences. So then the board can truly learn from each other.
Yeah, but sometimes addressing the conflict of interest openly there is no one size fit all solution. It needs that kind of judgment. It that kind of principle-based decision, conscious decision that, okay, this decision is because this kind of assumption. So it's not by the book.
So for sure, I think, again, it's also trying to come up with a consensus. I said, I think one of the reasons our board has been very successful is because at the board level, we're very lucky in our board, because more than 51% of the shareholders are represented. So we know that we have the shareholders represented. And then what is very important is to make sure that you have the independent directors there. And if you can bring about a consensus between those two parties, the independents and the shareholders, then you're going to have a solution that everyone can live with. openly and effectively. So getting that feeling of consensus, and also that the board is working towards a common goal, which is for the benefit of all stakeholders, not just the shareholders, but all stakeholders. Very often a large shareholder has got the same interests as a small shareholder, and that's, wanting to see the profitability of the company. So, and most independent directors will always recognize where there's common interests of all the vested parties.
Okay, so that sounds like if I were to compare your board, maybe it's a Ferrari that has to drive fast, and in order to drive fast and be safe, it has its own readiness, the system readiness inside.
That's good.
But maybe Minor International is about the business itself is challenging. You have to make lots of quick decisions, and lots of quick decisions like Ferrari can mean risky, the risk that the board has to take. How do you manage a Ferrari board of directors in this world where lots of uncertainty is happening?
I think one way is by preparing them well for the meeting and for the decision making. So, we tend to have regularly scheduled board meetings, and the board pack is given very early, so allowing sufficient time for board members to study what's going to be happening, or what the race that we're going to be running when the board meeting adjourns or begins. And so I think preparation for that meeting is very critical. Just as you would prepare to race a car, you would really study the car carefully. You'd study the track. You want to know everything about it. You want to know about your competitors. So to me, preparation is very critical to driving safely. And it's important to make sure that the board members come to the meeting very well prepared.
Okay, so you engage the board so they can work at their best level.
That's right.
In the past 12 months or even past 1.5 years with this COVID, with everything, how intensive has intensivity level at the board level is is going on? How often do you meet? What kind of discussion do you have?
We've been meeting more often during this last 1.5 years. It's been a very challenging time for our company, because usually our industries are very resilient to anything happening in the world. But with COVID, both of them were very challenged, food business as well as the hospitality and travel industry. So as a result of that, when you're faced with a crisis, one of the things that I've always believed, and I think our board believes it too, is that when you're faced with a crisis, you must respond quickly. You can't spend a long time studying it, because when you're burning through cash, we were burning through nearly 30 billion baht over the last year of time. And that's a huge amount of cash for a small, relatively small company. So we really took many steps very, very quickly to try to protect our, what I would call our cash burn, and reduce the cash burn. But you can only reduce it so much during a crisis like this. So then the second part was to prepare the company for the challenges that it was facing. And that meant going back to the market quickly to raise more money. So although the crisis began maybe in Chinese New Year, we went to the market by Easter to try to get more cash and raise funds and raise more facilities, so that we could carry ourselves through. We didn't know, like everyone else, how long it would last. We certainly didn't think it would last this long, but it has. And we're fortunate that we responded quickly to do it. And as a result, during this very challenging period, we're still here. We still have strong cash deposits, and we're ready to try to defeat COVID. But it couldn't have been possible if we hadn't prepared early and reacted early to this crisis.
You know, what you just mentioned remind me of this word called intuitive, but it has to be mindful intuitive. And that word to me is a very difficult word to understand. And it's a very difficult term to achieve, right? Because you yourself is the chairman, and at the same time, you found this company, so you have this intuitive about what's next. But other board, they might not have the same as you because they came from different experience, not because they are not as good. So how can you please give some example of, you know, fast decision, and then that director or this director say to you that, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of it? And it becomes a conscious decision that make this Ferrari go as smooth as possible.
You know, I think certainly the COVID experience resulted in many things that had to be discussed at a board level and reacted to very quickly. You know, one of the things that we were facing was the fact that different parts of the world were having different intensities of COVID. You know, and then we had decisions to take, whether we take global cutbacks or global salary reductions, or whether we take them in specific countries. And again, in this sort of an area, we really had little or no experience because we'd never really have seen a global endemic or a global pandemic that had this sort of effect. So for us, our board members that have had varied experience, international experience, were able to all contribute their knowledge to the board. And as a result of that, we made some very effective decisions very early on. You know, we took the decision of reducing costs across the board, around the world. And because we very quickly began to recognize that this was a global problem. And even though Thailand in the very early days was able to control it here in Thailand with very few cases, it didn't stop the world from impacting on us, because suddenly international travel stopped, even though domestic travel continued. So it was a really complex period of time. And you know, I think I appreciated our board more than ever, their varied experience, their global experience, because in effect, what we are is we're a Thai company with a global portfolio. And this makes it very different. You know, we are a Thai multinational, you might say.
Yeah, but what you just mentioned, another word came into my mind, which is trust.
You know, trust is something that takes a long time to develop and within a company. And I think that we're fortunate that over the last 50 years that we've been operating, we've had built up a tremendous amount of trust, not only from our shareholders, but from our banks and all of our stakeholders. But I would attribute that to, again, the strength of the board. The board is probably the single most important ingredient in establishing trust. You know, the first thing you look at when you look at a company is usually their board of directors. Right after you've looked at what their business is, the next step is who's on that board, who's guiding that company, you know, and who are the major shareholders. So it's absolutely critical to have trust. And during a crisis like what we've just seen, and we are still seeing, trust is the single most important thing. You know, there's trust by the shareholders in supporting this company through a difficult time. You know, when you're burning through cash, it takes a brave individual to keep putting more cash in. So you have to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes that's not very easy to see.
Yeah, so that made me think now that probably the most important thing of being a chairman, apart from, you know, getting good directors into your board, is to create trust-based culture within the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially right now when you have to make fast decisions.
Absolutely, and I think it's important that the board recognizes that those fast decisions are being made in the interest of the company and not in the interest of any one shareholder or any stakeholder.
And you know what, coming to trust, you trust them as you were the chairman, but they have to trust you and other board also because they come with a reputation. Each board comes with the reputation that they have to take a risk.
Correct. There's the nothing risk, nothing gain. So definitely there's a risk gain ratio that has to be addressed. And but I think as a board, there's always a tendency to reduce the amount of risk. It's almost like looking at when you look at a bondholder, he's not interested in how good the company is or how rapidly it's growing or how good is the management. He's interested in what are the financial strengths of that company. So because if he ever has to call on a bond, he's only going to be able to look at the financial resources. The trust of the board isn't going to pay back the bondholders.
Okay, so driven board must be based on trust. Yeah, so that leads me to the next topic that I want to discuss with you, which is you were the CEO of Minor International for a while. And then after that, you became just the chairman and you gave the CEO to someone else. I guess it must be really difficult for a founder, especially the founder that know what he's doing, to select the new CEO. So how did it happen? And can you enlighten us how you selected the CEO?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when selecting a CEO, you have to really look at the background, the experience, the integrity, and those are best looked at when you've worked with that person for a long period of time. In my particular case, the relationship stretched back over 12 years, and through a variety of positions in both finance as well as with in operations. So it was really, there was lots of pressure, I would say, to look at members of the family, to look at outsiders. But at the end of the day, I opted for someone who had a proven capability, not only to me, but to the board, and had been demonstrating that capability over a number of years, because he actually sat on the board for a number of those years. So he was able to demonstrate his capabilities to the entire board of directors, and I might add to the family members. So as a result, when the time came, it was a pretty easy decision to make because of the performance that we'd seen, and as a result of that, I feel we got a very strong CEO. It's important, I think, when you're trying to run a world-class company that you look for world-class talent. And, as much as I think we would all like to say that we can breed that within the family, sometimes you must turn outside to get that world-class individual.
Yeah. So it's for yours is homegrown, and that homegrown has become a board member before he became a CEO.
That's
so
correct.
He has created trust with the board, and the board has created trust with him. But with the pace of change in the past 2 years, I think the intensiveness of the CEO on working and the firefighting must be really, really hard. And with that, and still the CEO and the board has to work together on a trust base. With lots of disappointment, with lots of opportunity, it sounds to me like it could be overwhelming.
It can be, especially at times when you're not in control. I think the worst thing about this crisis is that we are not in control. Governments can make a decision, as we've seen in Thailand, to shut down dine-in. They can make a decision to close borders, to not allow tourism. It's one thing when you can say that we're trying to control our liabilities, or we're trying not to over borrow or overextend ourselves in business. But when it's the decision to lose money is taken away from you. In other words, when a government suddenly says you can't have dine-in business, or all tourists will not be allowed to enter the country, suddenly, what do? You're going to immediately start losing money, and it's not even under your control. So there's very little you can do except react to those sort of crises. And I think, again, we all are faced right now with the same crisis. The crisis is COVID. And it's how we react to that crisis that makes the difference between various companies, and it makes the difference between survival and failure. So I think it's a very challenging time. I've always said that I faced many crises in my life, from the '97 the 𝐍𝐚𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐴 crisis to the tsunami to SARS, but every other crisis was like a walk in the park compared to this crisis. This crisis, no one has any experience in. No one knows how long it will last. No one knows how long and how deep it will be. No one has expected the amount of death that we've seen globally. So we're in a new ball game that no one else has played, and no one has any experience in this game. So all you can really draw upon is your past experiences, your past dealings with crisis, to try to help you through this incredible event. And as I said, to me, we've never faced an event where we've lost so much money so quickly and beyond our control. It wasn't that we made a bad decision. I think all of our decisions have been very careful, and there's no decisions that I can think of that I've made that I wouldn't still uphold. Even the decision to purchase NH, which was very carefully considered. It was the biggest acquisition we'd ever made. We made it in 2018. And that required an investment of about $3 billion of shareholders' funds. And that decision resulted in probably a loss close to $1 billion. But I believe it was still the right decision, and I think that opinion is shared by our board of directors, and that's very important. That you still recognize that it was a good decision. I'd be the first one to stand up and say, look, I think we shouldn't have done it, and I wish I could reverse it. But to this day, we acquired incredible human talent. We didn't buy NH to just for their assets or for their profits at the time. We bought it for the people, and that to me is a very good rationale for buying a company. When you gain tremendous human resources, this is at the company level. We've been talking about the board level, how important people are. Well, it's equally as important at the corporate level. So that's why even today, I still believe that our board made an excellent decision, and one that we are still very proud to say was our decision.
Yeah, so it reminds me of perfect storm. We are in a perfect storm, right?
It's truly a black swan event.
It's truly a black swan of that, and yes, and gray rhino and everything is everything comes together. And in this kind of crisis, sometimes you make mistake, and
yes.
You as a founder, maybe sometimes you have the hunch, oh, maybe he should not do that, or maybe this is not a good idea. But how do you balance that, because you are the chairman, you're not there to direct the CEO, but you are there to ensure that he make this business sustainable. And that may means that he has to learn, like you learn from your own mistake too. How do you balance that?
I think, if the mistake isn't going to kill you and can be considered part of the learning process, then I think it's okay to make mistakes. I think it's healthy. It's healthy within a board level. It's healthy within a corporate level. But obviously, I think any founder or chairman or a board of directors that will allow a mistake that will eventually kill the shareholders or kill the company, that to me is no longer a learning experience. That becomes a dying experience. So to me, it's okay to allow people to make some decisions, and they may not be the decisions that you want or you agree with, but it helps them to develop, which will make them a better leader or a better member of the board. So sometimes it does mean you have to go with something that intuitively you may say, I'd rather not do that, but it's important that that the board often acts together and often allows a certain amount of freedom to make a mistake. But as I said, it better not be a mistake that kills the company.
It must be quite difficult for you because you were the founder, you were there before, and it's like the father who look at their children growing up and made the same mistake that they did. But okay.
But it's important, otherwise you don't grow. If you don't make a few mistakes, you don't grow.
Right. Okay. Then the last part of the question will be on how you get the board, how do you evaluate the board performance, or how do the board reflect on what they do? Because it's a driven board. It's not like a compliance-based board where, by the book, this, but it's very dynamic, like Ferrari.
Mhm.
How do you all together or individually, and how do you as a chairman evaluate it and get evaluated as well?
I think one thing to me is that we self-evaluate for sure, like every board. I think we also have in our case an independent directors meeting every year where the independent directors meet together to evaluate the executive directors, you might say, and see how they're doing. And I think another step that to me is the final analysis is really when you confront your shareholders. The AGM to me is the final analysis, and you can judge very often the atmosphere within a shareholders meeting of what confidence they have in the board. We've been very fortunate. I think we're very transparent as a company, and we've spent a lot of time trying to share what we're doing at a board level with our shareholders. And generally, as a result of that, I think we've had extremely supportive shareholders because they have confidence in the board. They've observed the board. And that doesn't mean that every shareholder is happy when you make a profit, but perhaps the best test of shareholders is when you're making a loss, as we've had this last period. But I think that what we were able to show to our board is that it was an event that was outside our control. Everyone is facing the COVID crisis, so it's not as if it's a crisis that we created. It's not a financial crisis internally because we overborrowed. It's not a crisis of failure to recruit sufficient staff to. It's truly an event beyond the control of anyone and any corporate body or function. So as a result of that, I think that the evaluation of our board takes place at every board meeting. It takes place at every AGM, and it takes place at every annual review. And it's a process that never ends. You have to continually evaluate yourself, as we all do, or should be doing individually, evaluating our performance. And that also means that directors have to evaluate when they feel that their time is up or that they can no longer contribute to a board. It's not been unusual for me to see over the years a board member that says, look, I've really enjoyed my time here, but I think now it's time for me to step down. And I've also made that same decision with boards where I feel that I've contributed all I can contribute, and now I'm just occupying a seat, and it's important that they get someone new in that seat in order to continue to help the company. So it's also, evaluating ourselves. And, I often say that the time to step down is when you stop learning. To me, I go to a board meeting with the objective of what can I learn at that board meeting? What new things can I learn from my other fellow board members? And as long as you can still learn something, then I think you can still be effective. The minute you stop learning, the minute your mind shuts down or your brain shuts down and doesn't want to learn new things, because what we're facing every day are new challenges. The COVID-19 is a great example that it's something that no one had any experience in. So to me, we're all learning right now, and that learning will be helpful to us. But if you can't learn, or you won't learn, or you don't learn, then that's the time to step out. And hopefully that's one of the times when all of our board, I think, would recognize when they're not able to assist.
Wow, that is a great wisdom. When you stop learning, it's time to step down. Kun Bill, let me summarize what I heard from you today. And this is really, really a great wisdom. So firstly, you believe as a chairman and as a founder also, you believe that good directors is the key to the sustainability of the organization. Good directors. And all these good directors, they also bring good directors. Good directors attract good directors, and good directors develop good directors.
Correct.
Because all of them keep learning and they become the engine of the Ferrari. And the next one is you look for the character of three things, which is integrity, intelligence, and the last one is common sense.
That's correct.
Okay. Also, you look for the board that has kind of experience from other board. And that's very important, the director that has experience from another board, because they brought in the richness of that experience, the richness of that, the dilemma that they faced in another board too, right? And then as we know that, I like this word from you that, you know, conflict of interest and synergy are like two sides of one coin. You cannot avoid it. If you avoid conflict of interest, you are avoiding the synergies at the same time. You are avoiding opportunities at the same time. It's just how to address that conflict of interest mindfully. And that you look to the board who speak up, right? Maybe that is another qualification that I forgot to say, the board who can speak up, the directors who can speak up. So as a chairman, you are there to encourage other boards to speak up, and other boards encourage other boards to speak up too. Right? As a role of the chairman and the founder, the most difficult thing is to find the right CEO, and it takes time. And that CEO, you chose to choose from the one that already established trust with the board, right? And then with the trust base between the CEO and among the board, you can make conscious decision, even though this is going to be a fast-paced this business, because you are into crisis, you're into to what we call perfect storm. And lastly, if you stop learning, please step down. Kun Bill, do you have any other thing to add?
No, I think you summarized it very well. I think as I said, it's very important that a board is outspoken. They've got to be able to speak their mind openly without fear of repercussions or the fact that it's going to in any way hurt them or hurt the company. So it's creating that atmosphere where people can be outspoken, and that when you're outspoken, I think you're truly listening.
Exactly. And the role of the chairman is to speak last.
Yes, that's correct. Absolutely. Don't color the view of your directors, otherwise you've lost your director's benefit.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So that summarized what we learned from the paradox in the boardroom, the difference between the chairman and which is where the different hat as the founder. But no synergy comes without any conflict by itself.
Absolutely.
And that we need good board with the good judgment, good intuitive and trust based to work together and find the best solution for all stakeholders.
Absolutely. Very good.
Thank you very much, Kun Bill.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.